Council Township of Springwater of May 20, 2020 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, due to COVID-19, Council's taking the necessary steps to limit in-person meetings. As such, some members of Council, 4 councillors, are participating in the meeting electronically, and 3 councillors are physically distanced, along with staff here in the Administration Centre. Residents are invited to tune in to the meetings by either watching them on the Township website, www.springwater.ca, listening to the meeting live from a telephone by calling 647-558-0588, and the meeting ID is 860-1590-6433 and the pound sign at the end. This option is available during the duration of the meeting, and for those who are unable to do either of those and want to watch the live stream, they're encouraged to review the meeting at your convenience by watching the video on the Township's YouTube channel. Councillors, good evening. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interests? Okay. And next, we don't have any deputations or presentations tonight on the agenda, item 3, so item 4, question period. Members of the public are able to ask questions by submitting them by 4:30 the day of the meeting to the Clerk's Department. And we have tonight with us Deputy Clerk Helmke. Did we receive any questions, Deputy Clerk?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. No, we didn't receive any questions.
Thank you. Moving on to item 5.1, adoption of the minutes of council. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get these on the floor? Councillor Cabral, Councillor Ma, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council, May 6, 2020. Any questions or comments with respect to these? That these be accepted. All those in favor? Carried. Item 5, there are no adoption of boards or committees or other organizations. And item 6, there's no correspondence and information items, so we turn to item 7.1, which is the first action report, Pilot Community Garden Project. So before we get into, can I have a mover or seconder to get this on the floor, please? Councillor Moore, Councillor Hanna. I believe Brianna Dean is on the call and in the meeting, so please give us an overview of this, Brianna. Three, two, one. CAO Schmidt.
Good evening. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, good evening. Okay, so for our community garden reports, the report is presented to council in response for an item for future consideration that came at the April 15th, 2020 council meeting. The community garden in Springwater was brought up in response to COVID-19 and helping to offer ways to provide food security in Springwater during this current situation, as well as moving forward in the future. So the report will give a summary on information that has been researched and learned from talking to other municipal partners and people that have community gardens in local municipalities, as well as through surrounding areas and cities. And give a high level idea of different options, 2 options for the community gardens that are currently being presented in Township in Elmville for this pilot project, as well as some summary pricing to get the community garden started and some different options. So the report will go through a few different detailed items, and we'll have 2 different options presented to council tonight. So for the community garden pilot project, we are looking at the optional locations of Bishop Park, which is located on Amelia Street in Elmville, or Robinson Park, which is located on Queen Street, coming out of the west end of Elmville. Both of these locations provide green space that would allow for a community garden of what we think would be a decent size to be able to provide plots, communal plots, or allotment plots to community members. We are looking at a pilot project of approximately 8 to 10 plots that we will be suggesting as allotment plots that could be rented by residents within Springwater. If the community garden pilot project was accepted from council tonight and they would like to move forward to it, we would be following the restrictions of the guidelines, of the Simcoe Muskoka District Health Unit for their COVID-19 public health guidance for community gardens for this season. And those guidelines are attached as Appendix C in the reports for council tonight. So in some of my research in looking into local community gardens and other municipalities, there is a varying organization, I guess, to different community gardens. So some municipalities are involved from a budget standpoint and a staffing standpoint, and some municipalities are involved just from a standpoint of having municipal lands that meet the requirements to have either a plot style or an in-ground community garden that has been made available to community groups to rent, or for a community group to kind of oversee and lease or use the land for community garden use. So community gardens can be used as a communal or a pantry style plot, which multiple people would garden, and they would garden for the benefit of the community or a food bank or different organizations. Allotment style gardens are gardens that individuals would rent and they would garden for themselves. If they do have extra produce coming out of those gardens, they can put it in a donation bin for a local organization or a food bank. And then there's also the mix of those two in one garden plot. So currently, under the restrictions of COVID-19, it is suggested that no matter which garden option is decided upon or gone within a municipality, that physical distancing still has to be adhered to, and only so many people can be in the garden at a time based on the size of the garden. So the gardens can have fences or be non-fenced, and they can be raised plots or in the ground plots. Staff are recommending that it would be an in-ground plot that would be suggested at Elmville. It is agricultural land in that area, so we think the soil would be decent soil as well. If we were looking for a tighter time frame to get in the ground this spring, it would allow us to be able to till that land and be able to get in the ground at a more reasonable time frame than building standalone plots or raised plots. So at this point, we don't have a community group involvement that has been expressed to the township, but that would come forth as the project was looked into further. So at this time, we would be recommending that the community garden would be overseen by Parks and Recreation Township staff to get it up and running and off the ground. And as the plots were rented, those would be then the responsibility of the resident or the renter to maintain those plots and look after them based on the guidelines that were recommended in the guideline and the policy report that is also attached for you tonight.
Thank you for that overview. Okay, I will open it up to comments, questions from council. Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I think it's a great project. My concern would be the cost of it. Have we or will we reach out to the community to see if they're interested in how many we would have before we spend that kind of money?
Brianna?
Through you, Mayor, to Councillor Ma. Yes, so one of the suggestions in the report is that a survey be conducted, and a draft copy of the survey is attached as appendix, I believe it's appendix E. to inquire about the interest and involvement level from the community from a standpoint of renting plots, as well as being involved from a volunteer standpoint. So one of the thoughts with the pilot community garden project, I believe when it was first presented at council on April 15th, that it would be a way to provide an area of access for produce for local residents that would need access to that and didn't currently have that land. So it would be a bit of a pilot project for this year and could be expanded on in the future. And if it was approved and it was wanting to go ahead, that there could be funding possibilities for it in the future as well.
Follow on?
Now, thank you, Mayor Allen. Just wondering about the cost per the residents who's going to basically rent a plot. Is the cost efficient enough or high enough? What if you pay $20 and you just leave it and then the township would go in and just clear it out? Or would you raise the money to be a little higher so they have more responsibility?
Brianna?
Yep, thank you, Councillor Ma. So at the $20, that fee is a standard fee that I've looked at based on research from other municipalities, and it's kind of more of an administration fee than it is a cost recovery fee. So in the guidelines and policies, it does state that the renter is responsible for their gardening plot and keeping it up to acceptable standards, weeding it, removing their produce, cleaning it out at the end of the year and having it ready for the next renter or themselves for the following year. So the thought, and when a community garden works properly into the way that it is meant to work, that the gardeners do oversee that like they would oversee a garden at their own house. There is potential that the garden could become unkept, and the township would first contact the renter to try and arrange for them to come to it and tend to the garden. And if it couldn't be met, then the township would have to step in and garden that garden for the rest of the year, or take it out of operation if it was a garden that wasn't producing anything.
Thank you.
Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. A few comments first. It was a good report. However, I think the costs seem to be something that I guess there's a difference between a community garden and what one might call a cooperative garden. And if we can just look at the item here where the garden plots are laid out, I don't know if you can bring that up on your screen down there. It's on page 4. Garden plot layout with the 4.25 feet in between. I'm just looking at some of the costs and how we might be able to mitigate or eliminate them, at least for this pilot project, because to be quite honest, what I envisioned was an opportunity for community members to have a location where they could go out and engage in gardening, whereas they might not be able to do so given their current residential situations. They might live in an apartment or whatever. But I'm thinking the one location in behind the water pump station at Bishop's Park might be the most suitable one. However, I'm wondering about cutting into the soil there, why we can't just plow strips that are 4 feet wide and 12 feet long, with possibly 1 or 2 walkways, even 5 feet or 6 feet wide, and just leave that in grass. Of course, the fellows, when they're mowing the grass there, I'm sure they could just take a lawnmower across there. That would certainly eliminate the need for crushed gravel at approximately $50 per square meter. And since the gardens would be in the ground, I would kind of also think that it would be more of a way, I think, for these individuals to sign on to maybe an established term or an agreement with certain rules that would be in place. They'd have to supply their own tools and whatnot. I mean, initially, I would suspect the township might be able to take a rototiller in there. They have maybe some equipment that might allow them the opportunity to till the soil so that these plots can then be cultivated. I just don't see that we necessarily need to have the expense of fencing, although it's a good idea. I think it might be better to permit the people who may want to have a plot to put up their own fence if they want to, but they would have to adhere to the requirements and specifications that would be set out by the township. So as much as I'd like to see the community garden go forward, I do have some reservations with costs, and also have some reservations, unfortunately, with staff in an ongoing capacity having to maintain or look after it. I would anticipate that the people that would sign up to garden these plots would ultimately assume the responsibility for them, and if they opted not to and let them go, then I would suspect the township then might have to take it upon themselves to go in there and turn whatever they've planted back into the ground. But as much as I'd like to see this go forward, I do have concerns about the overall cost implications for township.
Okay, thank you. Brianna, any comments to those points?
Thank you, Mayor, through to Councillor Cabral. Yes, thank you for your comments. So yes, the report wanted to supply council with kind of an overview of a full community garden project and what it would look like, similar to what other community gardens are popping up. So a lot of projects do take some time to get off the ground, do some research and surveys. And they are able to get community groups and volunteer groups usually step up and be quite involved, if not fully oversee the operations, which then significantly reduces the budget implications as well as the staff manpower implications. And in regards to Bishop Park, that was originally one of staff's first recommended options for it. When we did look at the properties, staff in the end think Robinson Park might be a little bit more compatible for the community garden, just in regards to the amount of shade cover that is at Bishop Park. It does have great accessibility to there with the parking in from the road. There is a lot of shade cover there with the overhanging trees and behind the shed building. So Robinson Park, we thought was another great option for that if we looked at as well.
Follow up, Mayor Allen?
Yes, thank you. Then Councillor Hanna.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm not, I do agree that Robinson's Park would also be a suitable location. I just did look at the overall size, and both of them have merit. But it seemed that Robinson's Park was a little smaller, but at the same time, Robinson's Park is underutilized, so it might actually be the better location. So I do tend to agree with you there. I guess what I'm really kind of looking to is the simplest way that we might be able to provide an opportunity to a resident to have a garden with as little cost to the township as possible, so that if they want to, it's there. If nobody chooses to take us up on the offer for this growing season, then I would certainly suggest that we move forward and continue as staff have recommended in their reports to looking at enlarging the project down the road.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor, and let me take this opportunity to say it's nice to see everybody. I didn't think I'd miss you all as much as I do. Thank you for the report. I find the report was extremely detailed, and as everyone knows, I supported this future consideration as a great initiative. However, I got major concerns, and I guess my first concern should be financial. Given the COVID-19 and the potential it has on our municipality, if you like, for possible financial impacts going forward, because we really don't know how long this is going to last. I know everybody's optimistic. They think the end of June and so on, and I hope that's right. But given the potential loss we've had and what we're going to have if this continues, I don't know if this is the time we should be going into other expenditures that are not a higher priority. I do agree that the community farm plots and so on would be great. When I first supported this, my vision was I saw the use of vacant lands, maybe lands that are scheduled to be developed, that are on hold and might not be developed for two or 3 years. I saw that as an opportunity to maybe have some farm plots, or even reaching out to a local farm community and see if there's a farmer that wants to donate or rent some land to the municipality to turn over and say, here's some land and go and plant your vegetables if you want. I can't support this because I don't agree with the costs. I'm not even sure if we should be digging up park land to plant a few vegetable plots for 8 or 10 people, especially the cost somewhere between $15,000 and $16,000. You're never going to coop that many vegetables in those plots in the next 20 years. So all that stuff said, I can't support this motion the way it's written.
Okay, thank you. Other, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Just a couple of comments. I love the idea of the community garden. I think it's a fabulous idea. The issues I have, I didn't love either location for the obvious reasons that were pointed out, the one being no sidewalk access and the other being too much tree cover. So neither location seemed perfect to me. And when I look at the date, it's May the 20th today. The report says everything needed to be planted by June 1st. So we've got 10 days to sort this out. I feel like there's just a lot of unknowns. I don't love the idea of a staff person committing 20 hours a week to this project. And I think that the survey is probably our best bet to do the survey first. Let's get a feel for who really is interested and look for some partnerships. I'd love to see maybe the hardware store or some community or service groups join us and offset some of that cost. So I'm just feeling a little rushed. But aside from that, I love the idea.
Yeah, Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Mayor Allen, and further to Councillor Moore's comments, I too agree that I think it's a great initiative to put forward now so that we're prepared for our next season, and we can put it in discussion through budget. I will agree that the two locations both have pros and cons. But I would like to see that this continues as an IFC to move forward, and that we, again, with community partners, keep it on the books, but not move forward with it for this growing season.
So you're proposing an amendment?
I would like to propose an amendment.
Can you maybe work on wordings with Deputy
Yep, yes I can.
Clerk? Councillor Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I just wanted to comment here that in all fairness to staff, they've pretty well given us every option that could be considered for a community garden. And I guess it's the two extremes. There's one where there's a lot of involvement, a lot of money, and kind of like the Cadillac community garden, as opposed to simply cultivating some land, leaving a strip of green in between, setting aside a few plots, and allowing some residents to grow some vegetables on those. So I guess what I envisioned was that at this stage of the game to give them the opportunity. But I do appreciate staff giving us pretty well everything we could want. The unfortunate aspect is that it also creates a situation where some of us obviously are struggling with money. I mean, I'm struggling with that. I don't see the need for township to incur a whole lot of costs. I think most of the costs could be borne if someone wanted a fence, meet the specifications for the fence, have it installed. Staff could go have a peek at it, and if it met the specifications, carry on, and hopefully they'd be using their own tools as well. So as much as I'd like to see it go forward and be available to the residents now, I certainly understand other councillors' comments and concerns.
Yeah, certainly when Recreation Advisory Committee brought this up a year ago or so, and we're starting to look into this, it was certainly a good idea, but then COVID came upon us, and I agree, it's a comprehensive report, well-researched, well-presented. I just see that, in the evenings and on the weekends, when people want to get access to their gardens, and you've got 4.25 feet in between the plots, it's pretty tough to accomplish physical distancing and the priority of who has access to tend to their garden when it gets overcrowded and for how long. So we would need some considerable oversight and sharing that might be a bit of a challenge. So I think we have an amendment put forward moved by Deputy Mayor Coughlin, and the Deputy Clerk is working on the wording. Councillor Ritchie.
Just throw my 2 cents worth there into the mix. I like Robinson Park. I like both areas, to tell you the truth. The thing about Amelia Street, it's got sidewalks, like Councillor Moore mentioned, easy accessibility, good parking. The bad thing about it is we're in the old section of town where there's all big lots to have gardens. And that's what I like about Robinson Park. It's closer to that new subdivision on the outside of town where you got postage-sized stamp lots where that community garden would work. So it's one against the other, but I still, and again, the nice thing about Amelia Street is that just up the street on William Street, we have our 1 yard where we have equipment and men, and like Councillor Cabral mentioned, if we were to go to a 4-foot wide strip, I think we have those smaller turf-sized tractors where if you were to put it into the budget where we got like a 4-foot wide rototiller, you could make one strip down, rototill it all up, make it nice and fine for a nice seed bed, and leave those strips. That would be very cost efficient and work very well and be back up the street to the yard. You're not driving all over the place. And again, Amelia Street offers lots of parking and walking, and so, and that begs the question, is there other areas like over in that new subdivision going out of town? Do we have any land over there, any parkland where we could do that? I see there's that other new street going in the back, and I know Mora Brothers, I talk to those guys all the time. They could build the whole subdivision out, and they are selling homes in there, by the way, too. So that's something to keep in mind over in that area, as well as over by the public school. Any areas where there's newer subdivisions and smaller lots, I could see people really taking advantage of this. And but I think for now, Councillor Moore mentioned, you know what, this is the time we got to start digging up our gardens. So to do the review, do the survey, see what the feedback is, and assess that, and go to the next steps and go from there. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Deputy Clerk, do you have, can you read us a proposed amendment?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Procedurally, you also have the option to divide the motion because there's distinct parts of the motion, so that is an option before council if you want to vote on each of the options separately. There is an amendment from Deputy Mayor Coughlin if you would like me to read it, and then I can reread the motion how she would have it amended.
Please.
So the motion before council, moved by Deputy Mayor Coughlin, that the motion before council be amended as follows: to remove approving the pilot project, to remove the options for the locations, to remove approving the draft community garden policy as attached as Appendix A, and remove the funding provided, and to only include the last paragraph that a community garden survey attached as Appendix B be conducted to gather further research. So the motion would read as amended, that the report from the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator regarding the pilot community garden project dated May 20, 2020 be received, and that a community garden survey attached as Appendix B be conducted to gather further research, gauge interest, and additional desired locations for community garden projects in Springwater Township to be outlined in a future report brought forth to council.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Ma, any further discussions before we vote? Councillor Ma?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. I would just think it with everyone's comment, maybe with the location, if maybe we can coordinate with the Recreation Advisory Committee on their input of location, since that's what the Recreation Committee is for.
does the mover and seconder agree to amend it to include reference to that?
That can be a friendly amendment, and that could be something that Brianna takes back to the Recreation Advisory
Okay.
Committee.
Please, Councillor Cabral?
Mayor Allen, 2 points. I guess the first one being, I would like to see that we have some kind of a time frame to get this back so that we're not in the same position down the road. And the second one is, I do have some difficulty with the CRA jumping in, and not to say that they don't have valid reasons, but I think the survey should go forth on its own. I think the residents should provide us the input as far as what areas may be desiring of a community garden. And based on what we get back from them, I think then it would be appropriate to proceed to the CRA with that information for their input at that time.
Yeah, I think that's what was contemplated, Councillor Cabral, was to certainly go ahead with the survey. That's part of the existing amendment, but to have the survey and follow-up report have input from CRA.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. And the only other thing I would like to add is I would still like to see, I hate to use the term bare bones, but I would like to see a bare bones option presented to council as far as a community garden is concerned. That might satisfy us as far as the cost aspects are concerned.
Right. Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I'm not sure the rest of the Springwater Township would be interested in doing that, given the lot sizes generally in other wards, but I just want to make sure that the survey would be in fact distributed township-wide to give every community the opportunity.
Thank you. So can you read the friendly amendment and the amendment, please?
Yep. That the motion before council be amended as follows: to remove approving the pilot project, to remove the options for the locations, to remove approving the draft community garden policy as attached as Appendix A, and remove the funding provided, and to only include the last paragraph that a community garden survey attached as Appendix B be conducted to gather further research, and that the Recreation Advisory Committee be consulted.
Okay. All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Opposed? Okay, that's unanimously approved. Thank you. Next, we move on to 8.
And you just have to vote on the main motion
Oh,
as
yes.
amended.
Okay. So can you
So the
tell us the
mover was,
abbreviated main motion, please?
yep, so the mover was Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Hanna, that the report from the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator regarding pilot community garden project dated May 20th, 2020 be received, and that a community garden survey attached as Appendix B be conducted to gather further research, gauge interest, and additional desired locations for community garden projects in Springwater Township to be outlined in a future report brought forth to council, and that the Recreation Advisory Committee be consulted.
Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Next, we move on to action reports. Item 8, 8.1. There are 2 action reports. 8.2, draft updated hiring policy, and 8.3, related to the Elmvale developments. Anybody like either one pulled, or just make reference to comments? Councillor Hanna?
Comment please on, I guess it's 8.2, the draft hiring, and just a comment. Okay, that's the only one. Thank you.
Councillor Cabral, I saw your hand up.
Yes, just comments with respect to the hiring policy. A couple of questions, really.
Okay, let's start with Councillor Hanna on 8.2, hiring policy.
Thank you, and I apologize because I don't have the report in front of me because I'm watching all you nice folks on TV here, but at 8.2, the item 4, I believe it is, it says draft hiring, interview/test candidates. In that area, it talks about senior management and director positions. It says that council may be included, members of council, but the second part is the second part says around interviews may include all members of council. I believe the second round of interviews for senior management or director positions shouldn't be a may. It should, all of council should be invited to attend, and then if they don't attend, then the onus is on them. But rather than say they may attend, they should be invited to attend. Because if you don't say should be invited, then whoever is making the decision as to whether they'll be invited or not, the onus is on them, and they may reap any criticism in the future. So I'm just suggesting there be more onus put on council to be invited and then make the decision whether they intend or not.
Thank you. C.L. Schmidt, is Manager DeVried on the line? Manager Aaron DeVried, can you, do you have any comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yes, through the worship to Councillor Hannah, yes, that was my intention, but I can actually clear up the wording for that for when the bylaw comes back on June 3rd, to clear that up so that council should be invited. But the intent was that sometimes all of council may not be able to attend, but they should all be invited. So I can clean up the wording to make sure that that's.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Cabral, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Allen. A few questions, actually, with respect to, some has already been covered, but on page 5 of the draft policy, it speaks to posting vacancies internally for a minimum of 7 days and externally for a minimum of 3 calendar days. So, I mean, that's obviously the minimum period of time. I'm wondering why there's a discrepancy between the 7 days internally and only 3 days externally.
Manager DeVried?
That would be one question.
Okay, I'll pose the other one so she can answer both.
Okay, fair enough.
No, go ahead with the other, please.
Okay, the other one is with respect to the advertising of the posted vacancies. It does say that they'll be on the website and, work site jobs, but I also know that we quite often do post them in the Springwater News as part of our link, and I was curious to know if that would continue. And another question, there's 2 more, was with respect to the area that deals with late applications. I'm just wondering about that because generally speaking, if there's a deadline made, if you don't get it in by the deadline, then you're out of luck. And it seems that it could be seen as being unfair to those applicants who did get all their paperwork in on time to then have a late Johnny come lately. So I just was wanting some clarification on that. And the last one was with respect to references, but I think there's a section in there on page 6 with respect to applicants providing references from their current or previous employer. But I suspect that the section below that addresses this wherein an applicant might be self-employed and not have the ability to produce those types of references. So those were my questions there.
Okay, Manager DeVried?
So through to Councillor Cabral, through the worship, the minimum hire date for internally was, the 7 was picked just because of shifts to make sure that we could hit the most staff through 7 days. Externally, we selected a minimum of 3 calendar days just because sometimes in a rare instance, there may be cases where we have to post rather fast to get a hire. I'm thinking back to some cases for our summer students. In the past, we have hired camp counselors who have quit on short notice. So we've had to post rather quickly to try to get an applicant pool so that we can ensure that we have enough staff to run daycare. So it's very rare. So it would just be minimum. And in regards to the Springwater link, yes, that is the intention. And we would still continue that practice as well to advertise in the Springwater link. Just sometimes with the way the link comes out, every 2 weeks, generally a posting might miss it, but generally we do try to select dates where it does hit the link at least once. So late applications would just be in a very rare instance. For example, if somebody did have technical difficulty and couldn't apply by the noon deadline that's generally applied, we might then accept it at say 12:05, but it would be a very rare instance in that case. And as references, you did touch base that sometimes self-employed individuals might not have a reference, and in those cases, we would look at kind of those one-off bases in discussions with the hiring manager.
Thank you. Follow up, Mayor Allen?
Follow up?
Just in respect to the late applications, thank you for framing it that way because it certainly makes it a lot more understandable. The way it's written, though, it kind of leaves it wide open where they could submit their application 2, 3, 4 days later and still kind of, and I just see it being a bit controversial to those applicants who, did get all their paperwork in on time. So thank you very much.
Councillor Cabral, will you move 8.2 and 8.3?
Yes.
Councillor Hannah, second?
Yes.
Okay, that the action reports 8.2 through 8.3 be received and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented, being the draft updated hiring policy and 8.3 OP 217-004 Elmvale Developments. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Moving on to information reports, we have 3 of them. Can I have a mover and seconder to get those on the floor? Councillor Ma and Deputy Mayor Coghlan. Any comments with respect to 1, 2, or 3? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. I have questions at 9.1-2 and an observation at 9.1-3.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Councillor Hannah, go ahead.
Well, thank you. 9.1-2, the long-range financial plan. Under the paragraph heading of current status, it says working to address conditions. I'd just like clarification what conditions we're referring to there.
Okay. I'll start with CAO Schmidt and whether you want to bring in Director Corbeil or Director Spagnol or both.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hannah. So, Councillor Hannah, if I understand what you're asking, is under the report highlights on the first page? Is that what you're asking?
I'm sorry, I don't have the report up, but I just know under the heading of current status on that paragraph, there's a sentence in there that says working to address conditions. I'm not what conditions report referring to.
Sorry. Yeah, so on page, I believe it's page 3 of the report, under current status, it indicates, with the class environmental assessment complete, the developers and emitter secondary plan are working to address conditions. So as you're aware, or as you may be aware, the developers are looking at bringing forward and trying to clear different conditions for their mixed subdivision, which council saw before them in, I guess, March. There was a report that came forward for the tree clearing, and so that has moved forward, and now they're looking at trying to proceed with clearing the remainder of those conditions that were approved through the OMB or LPAT process back in 2012.
Okay, follow on.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't certain because there's those conditions that the province came forward after the environmental assessment came back.
Is that a question, Councillor Hannah?
I don't think I need an answer to it because I believe it's not those conditions that the province provided with reference to protecting species and so on.
That's correct. Okay, any other comments you had, Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Actually, a question with respect to the fire report.
Okay.
There's a number of them there, complaints, burn complaints, and it's burn without permit. And I know that some folks, and I did make inquiries with respect to this, weren't sure about how to, I guess, go about getting their permits because our facilities were closed. But what I've just realized here, unless I'm missing it, we should likely have one additional column on here, a column that specifies the date of the occurrence, because I can't tell if these were before we closed our facilities or if they were after we closed our facilities.
Okay.
Or am I missing it? I don't see dates for the specific incident numbers or occurrence numbers.
It's under. Deputy Mayor Coughlin?
Thank you, Marilyn. From what I can recall, the OCC is the incident number, and the second column from the left is the day, which is the date of the month. So 1 would be the 1st, 3 would be the 3rd, 5 would be the 5th, and so on.
Okay, thank you very much. That kind of clears that up. I was looking for a specific date. So that,
Okay. And permits are online. I got my permit online. Councillor Hannah, did you have a comment?
Oh, thank you. Yes, my comment was also with regard to the fire thing, only because of what Councillor Cabell has said. Mine was the same on burn without permits. There was I think in the first 10, there's like 6 calls burn without permits, of a total of 36 calls by our fire service during the month. 6 of them were burn without permits. Again, I'm just suggesting that maybe it's because they can't get them at the libraries and they can't buy them currently from our administrative center, that possibly we need to send out something in the link to remind people you can get the permit online.
Okay, I'll mention it in my next video, and we'll try to advertise it more. But it was quite easy to do when I tried it about a month and a half ago. Councillor Cabral?
thank you, Mayor Allen. That works great for people who utilize credit cards, but some folks still prefer to use cash. But I did want to also ask with respect to this, and I guess it's a question for fire representative if we have one handy. Were these dealt with by cautioning the individuals, or were these individuals charged under the bylaw for burning without a permit? I just was wondering if we had any leniency towards that, given the certain circumstances we're under right now.
Is Chief Kirk on the line? Deputy on the line? Do we have no CAO Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cabral, it's something that I can follow up with. I don't believe we have representation tonight from our fire department, so I'll follow up and I can provide council with that information.
Thank you very much, CO Schmidt. Appreciate that.
Okay, could we have a mover and a seconder for the information reports, please?
You already have a mover and a
We have
seconder?
a mover and a seconder. Okay, that the report items listed herein be received as information. 2020 budget and business plan results March 31, 2020. Updated long-range financial plan and fire and emergency services monthly fire report. I just actually want to make a comment myself on one. And once again, commend staff, CEO Schmidt, and all the directors on really doing a good job of assessing the operating and capital results. And March 31st results contain March, obviously, and that was the COVID outbreak month. And to come in with the financial results that we have is a real testament to managing the financials in a very fiscally responsible manner. So kudos to them. Okay, all those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Verbal reports. We don't have any planning related or official plan. County updates. Deputy Mayor Coughlin.
Thank you, Marilyn. As an update to our last county meeting, there was a motion brought before council by Bradford West Gwillimbury to investigate the costs associated to waste as a per address or per household rather than a levy assessment. So that will be brought forward back to county council at a later date. Also that the landfills have been reassessed and there are new openings and new hours at different land sites throughout the county, which are available online. And aside from that, yeah, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Moving on to municipal updates. Are there any municipal updates? Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor Allen, at the last council meeting, we were talking about the community improvement plan regarding the Hillsdale Pharmacy, and I had spoken about it, and I support it. Of course, it's in my ward. I think it'll be a great benefit to the residents of Hillsdale, and I really like this program as well too. why I'm bringing this up is I want to switch and go, it's not in my ward, it's actually in Ward 1. This is Lakelands Irrigation. The mural that they put on the side of their building, it's October the 11th, 1957. And it's the marching band going to, that's a real time capsule of history. And as you pull up to the lights in Elmville and you look to the right and you see that, they just did the whole building. It's just pure class. They did a great job. Earl must have got this idea from his wife because they did a great job. No disrespect, Earl, if you're listening. 1957 was a great year because I was born in September. But I just want to mention that I think this community improvement plan, it helps them, and every little thing like that matters a lot when you're a small town trying to compete with the big box stores. And I think for the people coming out of the cities, they come up here to open up their cottages and they see this and the flowers. It really it gives a great facade to the town. So I just want to compliment that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I also dropped into the drugstore up there, pharmacy, and introduced myself and congratulated them. And the owner is most appreciative of the assistance that the CIP program gave to him and his business. Any other municipal updates? Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I just wanted to give a little quick update on the library, if I could. Couple of things. The book courier position, I think Councillor Cabral had asked about last meeting, so confirmed that position's on hold. They are working diligently on a reopening plan, but they remain closed for now. When they open, predicting early June sometime, there'll be curbside pickup only. At that time, you could call in a request, but they're still sorting logistics on sharing book programs, etc. Plexiglass still needs to be installed, and other operational type things. So just so people know, they remain closed. Jody wanted me to pass on that they've had fantastic feedback for their online story time. So if anybody's interested, I'm not sure if she's posted that feedback, but just to say that it's been fabulous.
Thank you for that update. Any COVID update? CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, before I provide the COVID update, I just wanted to go back to 9.1.3, the question regarding the fire report. I've been able to confirm with our chief that those individuals without a burn permit were not fined. They were warned and educated, so no fines were actually laid.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay. So further to that, with regards to the COVID update, I have a couple of things here. So again, staff continues to monitor the situation on a daily basis, and we continue to listen for updates from federal, provincial, and local level public health officials. As you're all likely aware, stage 1 of the province's reopening framework commenced yesterday. With that, the provincial emergency order has been extended to May 29th. This includes gatherings of no more than 5 people. Outdoor playgrounds, fitness equipment, splash pads, etc. will remain closed until later stages of the province's reopening plan. Restaurants may only provide takeout or delivery options, so no dine-in is provided at this time. Schools will remain closed for the rest of the year. Overnight camps will remain closed. However, day camps will be permitted to operate under strict guidelines for July and August. So with this said, township staff are still looking into this and are aiming to have something at the June 3rd council meeting for council's consideration as to whether day camps in Springwater will occur in 2020. Daycare centers will remain closed for the time being, but are expected to reopen gradually in stage 2 of the province's reopening plan under very strict guidelines and similar to what is being currently provided for under the emergency child care centers. Reopenings for day camp and child care centers, again, will be at the discretion of the local health unit. So we will be also having a discussion with the Simcoe-Muskoka District Health Unit and getting their advice as to whether we should be considering opening day camps. Further to that, the Orr Lake boat launch and the Edenvale Conservation Authority or area are now reopened. Those were reopened on Friday and Saturday. In addition to that, all outdoor sports fields, so baseball, soccer, etc., outdoor pavilions, picnic areas, basketball courts, tennis courts, and pickleball are now all reopened. I do caution all participants must adhere to strict public health measures, and we are indicating that, the idea is not to have multiple players on the court at the same time for tennis and or pickleball. It would be more singles matches, if you will, one-on-one, and no spectators will be allowed. Township parks, open spaces, and trails remain open. Playgrounds and the Elmville splash pad remain closed until further notice. And the Community Control Group is currently working on finalizing a recovery plan for the township, and we're hoping to have something released later this week. And I'll leave it at that. If any members of council may have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Councillor Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Allen. CEO Schmidt, just with respect to the day camps, I know that that's something that's going to come before us in a little bit. Given that it might be June, would we still be in a position? I know a lot of the day camps are operated by our summer students. I'm just curious whether or not you have any summer students in your back pocket that you can call upon in the event we move forward with that, or will we have to do a full recruitment again?
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councilor Cabral. Great question. From my understanding is we've already gone out with our summer student recruitment, and we have essentially indicated to them that everything's on hold. We do have a number of them that are returning from previous years. So from my understanding, if we bring something forward to council in the beginning of June, we should be in a position, if council chooses to move forward, that we would have staff to be able to run those camps, should that be the direction we receive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 11, notice of motion. Any notices of motion? Item 12, items for future consideration. Any items for future consideration? Item 13 is bylaws. Can I have a mover and a seconder to approve the bylaws? Deputy Mayor Coghlan, Councillor Cabral, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 5000-314 zoning bylaw amendment, Stone Manor Woods, Yorkwood, Phase 4, ZB 219-002. All those in favor? Carried. And a mover and seconder to confirm the proceedings. Councillor Ma and Councillor Cabral, that the bylaw 220-033 to confirm and adopt proceedings of council at the regular meeting held on May 20th, listed herein, be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And a motion to adjourn. Councillor Ritchie, Deputy Mayor Coghlan, that the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:28 p.m. To meet again at a regular meeting on June the 3rd, 6:30 p.m., Council Chambers Administration Center in Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Stay safe, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.